Welcome to the latest episode of Digging into the Future. I'm Lynn Smullen, your host for today's show. And with me today, I am thrilled to welcome Rangu Salgame. Welcome, Rangu. It's so great to see you again.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Lynn.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, I think the last time we saw each other was 5 years ago.
That's
perhaps
right.
here
Time
at PTC.
flies, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, incredible.
Good to see
you too. And I know, look, you have an incredible business right now with Princeton Digital. I would love to spend some time sharing with our audience here a little bit about you and Princeton Digital and your journey. But before we get started, maybe you could help tell us a little bit about Princeton Digital and the growth you've been on.
Sure. Lynn, again, thanks for having me. It's good to be here. We got founded about little over 7 years ago. My co-founder and I founded the company. Happened to found it in Princeton, in my dining room in Princeton. We talked about it last time. And over the last 7 years, we have grown quite a bit. We're in 7 markets now, and we are 1.6 gigawatts in our portfolio. So I've been able to scale quite a bit. We have great investors. When we got founded, we got backed by Warburg Pincus, one of the well-known growth investors. Then since then, we've had Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, Mubadala from Abu Dhabi, and then most recently Stonepeak, the infra investor. So we have 4 great investors, deep-pocketed long-term investors, incredible scale, and key markets of Asia-Pac, well-positioned to serve the hyperscalers' growth, particularly as you know what's going on with AI, in addition to the cloud growth. So exciting time to be in the industry, and we're fortunate to be where we are.
Your timing was ideal, right, in terms of launch and AI.
Yeah.
Are you
we
seeing
knew exactly what was coming? No, I'm kidding.
So, I wonder, where are you seeing AI as driving your next markets for growth and your platform as you look forward? Where are you seeing the greatest growth in Asia?
Yeah, I think when we saw some of the early signs of AI, Lynn, was a little over 3 years ago, before ChatGPT made the headlines in the press. We had some inkling. We saw some of what was coming, and it was also the coincidence at the time when Singapore, which is one of the key markets, had a moratorium for data center growth, and so we were one of the first early movers to move into an area called Johor. It's right outside Singapore, and that was in the anticipation that AI could come in a large scale capacity requirement. So we built a 200 megawatt campus that has paid off significantly for us. It was all for AI. But since then, there are other markets that we have taken some kind of significant bets. For Mumbai, for example, we have made multiple campus bets in Mumbai, which has become a big AI center. Now, in addition to that, we are looking at Melbourne and Sydney. So the areas to look at from a stepping back, one of the key things that has happened in Asia, which was completely unanticipated even 3 years ago, was some of the markets in Asia, AI is being deployed, Gen AI training models, for example, for global use. And that is unlike any other past deployment of cloud and other technologies where it's also serving the local market, the local economy, and so on. Well, now places like Mumbai, Johor, Melbourne are being used for global deployment by the hyperscalers. And that's a significant shift. So the kind of quality and the scale that we need to deliver has to be at par with what's going on in the US. And that's where the big changes happen. And if you look ahead, we focus on these markets. Again, it's Australia, it's India, it's Southeast Asia, and Japan. Japan, this exciting time to be in Japan. We have a 100 megawatt site in Tokyo. We are looking at dramatically scaling that up further in Japan. And we see some big AI use cases coming in Japan as well.
That's incredible. And are those mostly for training? Or still right now, or are you starting to see inference and edge take a play in what you're doing?
So I think the first early use case was for training, from what we understood from our customers. And so it was either large-scale training, or some players would call it distributed training. So it is largely for training. But we are seeing now for inferencing quite a bit of capacity requirement coming in. And these are quite fungible with cloud. So it's kind of a similar deployment when it comes to cloud. But we're definitely seeing inference being used for. And that inference usage is actually accelerating further cloud usage. So it's interesting what we're seeing in the market. So it's training and inferencing both.
I imagine that's challenging how you look not to support just the data center side, but also connectivity and networks, does that change the requirements for how you look for partnerships, and how are you addressing the connectivity elements for your clients?
Yeah, I think connectivity is paramount, as you know. I think the locations we've picked or where the market tends to go has been going. Proximity to submarine cable still is very important.
Right.
Though for training, it's less of a latency issue than for cloud when you have to be much closer to the end user. But nevertheless, still have to have a proximity to submarine cable. Then, of course, terrestrial fiber is very important. In all these markets, we want to make sure there is enough fiber connectivity, so we have 3 or 4 at least connectivity connections coming into the site. And all these markets have, like Mumbai, like Melbourne, Johor, Tokyo, are extremely rich in terms of fiber options they can have.
Totally.
So I think that have become logical locations for AI and cloud as well.
Tremendous. So there's such great growth in the markets that you've selected right now. I do think it's rather prescient for the work that you did. One of the things I'd love to learn more about is the power and the energy side. I know sustainability is such an important tenet for Princeton Digital. Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing and how you see sustainability currently in your energy sources and options as you move forward.
Sure. I think from an energy perspective, we definitely have been able to focus in markets where there was enough power supply in the near term. Near term meaning 5 years plus. And places again like Mumbai, like Johor, Tokyo, Jakarta, they have very good power and enough at scale available. One of the things that has dramatically changed over the last 3 years, I would say, Lynn, is these utility companies or agencies which grant power quotas and power approvals are becoming a lot more discreet in whom they give power. They have a lot of power, they have power surplus in many of these markets, but they've been careful to give for companies who have execution track record, good quality capital, because they don't want companies to come and apply for power and then don't use it.
Right.
And that's the worst case when you have assets deployed, they made big investments. And I think that's a big shift we have seen, and we've been fortunate to be able to execute to some of the promises we made, and that helps us get more power in the region because of that. So execution track record, making sure we work with the local communities, I think those things have become extremely important when these utilities and agencies grant power quotas and approvals. The other thing we've focused, as you pointed out, is sustainability. I think we have picked markets where we have a good sense of where the utilities and the governments are going from a green power perspective. And we are able to leverage that. For example, markets like India, Mumbai particularly, have extremely dynamic green power industry, solar particularly in that part of the country. And we built captive solar plants which power our data centers. So we've been able to go completely solar in those kind of markets like India. On the other hand, places like Jakarta, we have embarked on a very unique first pilot. Now we're going to be rolling out across all our markets is HOVs for our gensets. And that has been, that's going to, it's not a full green, but it's a dramatic reduction of carbon emissions. So we're going from a multitude of tactics we're taking, going complete green, like from solar energy, to be able to do things like which will reduce carbon and gives a path to full emission-free by 2030, which is our aspirational target.
That is fantastic. And, look, those are the kinds of things that I think the communities that we serve find very important, right?
Absolutely.
How are you dealing with that? I would tell you that here, or at least what we see is, as an industry, we've really lacked a cohesive connection with our community about the value of what we bring in terms of infrastructure providers. How are you looking at that as from your vantage point, both in your region, but also our responsibility within the industry?
I think the most important thing we felt was to create awareness amongst policymakers and community leaders. So we spent time working with those agencies and particularly policymakers to see what data centers would bring to the region. Just not the headline investment numbers, but also how the money trickles in, how jobs are created, and the whole impact of a data center that could be, have a significant ramifications for the region. And also how to work with the local community to understand their challenges. Things like water. How do we minimize our water usage? What are the other things we could do to mitigate some of that challenges that are faced by the communities? I think some of it also misperception, misunderstanding, how power cost goes from increasing data center usage. Does it really increase the consumer prices or not? I think if you spend time with the utility companies, the community leaders, I think there's a tremendous level of feeling of partnership and collaboration,
Totally.
and that becomes a win-win approach. I think that's what we've been able to do in most of the markets we operate in.
Spending a lot of time with those communities
That's right,
one-on-one,
that's
right? For
right.
sure. One thing I think we can actually collaborate on even more so. Partnerships. Speaking of
Yes.
collaboration, I know you have a breadth of partnerships that you work with
Yeah.
in lots of areas to successfully deliver the platforms you do.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit about that, the partnerships you see currently, and then where do you see this transforming over time with those
Yeah.
partnerships?
Yeah. I think our partnerships have been largely around developers who do build the facilities for us. It is about general contractors, vendors, and customers, of course. And what we have not done is joint ventures and so on. So we are 100% PDG every market we operate. That's a strategic choice we made early on, and so customers find the same PDG whether they're in Tokyo or whether they're in Seoul or whether they're in
Right.
Sydney, is going to be the same PDG. But behind the scene, it's all partnerships in terms of how do we get a building constructed. So we work with developers in Tokyo, we do work with developers in Seoul. There are two different developers, but it's a whole approach is with a partnership approach. And what differentiates there, Lynn, is we are pretty transparent in how we work with our partners. It's all about trying to construct a deal where you're pretty open about how to allocate risk to each other.
Right.
Most often people fail when they're not transparent about their trying to manage the deal structure in a way that people are calculating risk without pricing it right or not being open about it. And we have a pretty good playbook in how we develop partnerships, whether it's with developers and other stakeholders to help build our data centers. And that has been a pretty important cornerstone of our success in working with a multitude of these global developers.
Let's talk a little bit about you and about you as a leader and your journey and the journey you've been on that's brought you to Princeton Digital, which is so exciting. Where did you start, from an experience perspective, and what brought you to where you are today?
Thank you, Lynn. I've been fortunate to be in the industry for a long time. As you can see, I was at Verizon, Cisco, and Tata Communications, and some of the spin-off companies. And I was fortunate to have seen different stages of the internet grow. In the early days, in the 90s, my first internet venture in Verizon, a data center we were building was one floor rented on Wall Street, on Broad Street behind New York Stock Exchange. And from there, we started seeing building data centers of a building, and then came campuses. Now we are talking about mega campuses, right? We'll be building cities in data centers. So we have come a long way as an industry over the last 30 years, and I've been fortunate being part of that industry, worked around the globe, and started PDG when my co-founder and I finished a last venture at Tata.com, where we had a data center business, sold it, exited that venture, selling to Temasek STT. And then we started our own venture. We didn't know what we wanted to do, but it was a blank sheet of paper. We said we want to build a blue chip company in digital infrastructure space, and started that kind of journey in my dining room in Princeton. And
Incredible.
From that, we set up a small shop in Manhattan, New York, and had Warburg Pincus come and back us to start this venture. And eventually we decided to focus only on Asia. So we saw there was a unique opportunity to create a pan-Asia platform where hyperscalers would find tremendous value in working with a partner who would have multiple countries, multiple locations offering at the same global quality. Like they're buying in Reston, Virginia or Dallas, they should buy the same feeling with Princeton where they're buying in Tokyo or Mumbai. And that is a vision we started off with, and that was the journey. So it's been exciting being on our own and creating this partnership with our customers and investors.
What I love about that story is all of it coming together, both technology and experience.
Yeah.
And so speaking to some of our next generation leaders who are out there creating the next generation Googles and Metas of the world, what inspired you the most to break out on your own after coming from Tata and Verizon and other great companies, including Cisco?
Yeah. I think it just happens. It's one of those moments when you feel it's right. I had a great co-founder with me. Just both of us decided at the moment that we had done something big in a previous venture and said now we should go do something on our own. And I think it's just one of those. It just happens at the moment, and it just sees it. And I think we did, and it just happened, and we saw a lot of ups and downs. So that's what entrepreneurship is. Once you commit to the journey, then it's not looking back. It's going through ups and downs. And as you know, when you step back on a venture, it feels like a straight line. But when you live through it, there's a lot of zigzags and ups and downs. And when we got started, we had a lot of challenges in the world at that time, but we kept going. And then COVID happened, and then we still came out of that. So I think it's one thing after the other. But overall, it's been absolutely satisfying and a phenomenal journey. And it's just about, to your point, when you start something, it just has to happen, and you have to feel it.
Excellent. Okay, I have a personal question for you.
Yeah.
What book is on your nightstand right now that you're reading?
Literally started in 1929.
Oh, you did?
Andrew Sorkin.
Yes.
So I'm just
Andrew Sorkin.
curious. Yeah, his way of writing the
Excellent.
book. So I just literally started on the flight here.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, Rangu, it is such a pleasure to see you again and to have you here at Digging into the Future. I can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts and insights about Princeton Digital, but also about your experience as a leader and our industry going forward. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Good to see you, Lynn, and thanks for having me.
We'll do this again.
Good talking to you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.